Chapter 12. After my eye-opening lunch with Izzy, she sent me off with some great meditation tips and suggested I carve out a regular time for it. Her advice was to live in each moment and let my intuition guide me. She also suggested that I begin each day with Kundalini yoga. Okay, homework. I could handle this. My first experience with yoga was somewhat traumatic. Charlotte had suggested that I join her at this really trendy studio downtown that housed the city's first hot yoga class. "It's like yoga on a tropical island," she exclaimed, trying to sell me on it. I am not athletic, nor am I adventurous. It took a lot for me to walk more than 2 blocks. I did not like sweating, which seemed to pour from my skin at the merest rise in temperature. "I don't know, Charlotte. Yoga is really not my thing," I whined. "Come on, Kathryn. Everyone's doing it." She uttered the words she knew would make me cave. If jumping into the Hudson River was the latest trend, I would most likely be the second person to do it. Being that everyone in this scenario meant all the celebrities in town, it was kind of like I was obligated to join in. I was so trendy. I had to keep up. "Oh, all right. I just need to go shopping first." I went out and immediately bought the cutest yoga pants and tank top that I could find. They were this pastel pink and blue. It showed enough of my body to make the men in the class want to see more. My yoga mat, of course, matched my outfit. We arrived and immediately spread our never-used yoga mats out. The room was stifling. It was like a sauna. The steam seemed to be rising from the floor as the pretty and tiny instructor began the class. She spewed out terms I had never heard of that left my head the minute she had said them. I felt like the important thing was to keep up with the positions and not worry too much about downward doggy style or saluting the sun. We started out with some simple stretches, and I immediately felt dizzy. I had only consumed coffee so far that morning, and I figured I was experiencing a pretty good caffeine buzz. She kept reminding us that if we felt dizzy, to sit or lie down on our mat for a moment. No one ever seemed to miss a beat, though, so I soldiered on. I must have been in a room surrounded by pros. Charlotte was a natural. She moved with such ease and grace. I, on the other hand, was lucky if I did not wobble the entire time. My legs were very weak and did not seem to hold me up for long at all. A simple tree pose had me starting and stopping over and over again as I fell out of balance several times. We went from a warrior pose into a pose that I cannot remember, for as soon as I dipped down, tucked my head under, and bent over, I completely blacked out. I came to with many faces hovering above my fallen body. Charlotte looked annoyed and embarrassed in the background. One man was checking my pulse. The teacher was patting me on the cheek while explaining to the class that this was why we either sat or lied down if we felt dizzy. I was such a great example of that. I was never asked to join Charlotte for yoga or any other physical activity type class again. I knew that Kundalini would not be as intimidating as it really was not a trend. I had never even heard of it until then. Also, I had the best teachers in the business, Mother and Alan. Sean even decided to join in, and we figured we would make it a morning thing. Before breakfast, we would meet in the living room and work on this Kundalini process. Mother delighted in teaching us and even loaned me a workbook that coupled chakras and Kundalini. As soon as it warmed up, she wanted to take our classes outside. The first morning of our yoga class, I was downstairs in yoga pants that had never been to yoga before and a tight-fit cotton long-sleeve tee. The pretty pastel number that I wore to my one and only hot yoga class was snatched up by a young blonde in my apartment giveaway. I was ready. I was waiting for Mother and Alan to bring up some yoga mats from the basement when Sean walked through the door. "Morning," he said cheerfully. "Hey, you, how was the date?" I asked him. "You just won't stop with that," he teased. "Well, I am starting to learn how significant these relationships are," I told him as he sat down next to me on the couch. This brother and sister thing was getting more and more comfortable every day. I felt closer to my brother than I ever had when I was just his roommate when we were growing up. "I will have to thank Miss Izzy the next time I see her. She has been helping Cecily through her pain," Sean told me. That Izzy was an extraordinary person. "What is Cecily going through?" I asked, genuinely concerned. "Her father is dying from complications to alcoholism. Her mother died of cancer when she was 5. Her father basically just slowly killed himself. He was neglectful and sometimes even abusive. She confided all this to me last night. Izzy is part of the community center's mentor program, and she was assigned to Cecily. I had no idea why she was hurting so much, but I felt her pain. It runs so deep," Sean said sadly. I must have been killing the love of my life with everything I had been going through recently. But not as bad as Cecily and Sean must be going through. "I'm sorry. I have no idea what that must be like. Poor girl." I was sad for the girl that would be my brother's one. "She really has been through a lot. She's been staying at her dad's house to help him with her little sister. Her sister will graduate high school this spring and go off to college, so Cecily won't really be needed as much. Her father is not expected to live that long," Sean said with sadness. "We should do something special for her," I suggested, not knowing exactly how that escaped my mouth. New Cat was generous. "I was thinking the same thing. I just don't know what," Sean pondered a moment. "Is there anything that she has been really wanting to do?" I asked. I realized that sometimes men need help in these areas. New Cat now knows the difference between expecting men to just know what I want and when I want it, and the truth that men are not always good at assessing needs and wants in women. It's not their fault. I truly believe it is how they are wired. When women understand this, they evolve into more loving and patient beings. "She did mention something last night," he remembered. "She has always wanted to head into the city and experience a day seeing the sights and eating, maybe even catch a live band playing. It was such a simple request. If that would make her happy and keep her mind off of things, then she should have it. The closest city was nothing like New York, but it was a thriving metropolis with an eclectic group of people. It would not be overwhelming like it would be if we threw her into New York City for the first time. If I flat out give you some money, you have to promise me you will plan it and take her." I looked at him seriously. "I don't need money, Kat. I can take her without you giving me money," he mentioned. "I know that, but I want you to go all out and throw in a lot of extras, flowers, pampering, gifts. You may have to rent a car," I told him. "Besides," I added, "this would be my gift to both of you." I smiled as I heard Mother and Alan hurrying up the stairs with the yoga mats for us. Surprisingly, Kundalini yoga was something that seemed so natural to me. Of course, there were moves that I had attempted in the horrid hot yoga class, but this time around I felt more flexible and less sticky. Mother and Alan took us through a series of yoga moves before having us sit in prayer pose on our mats, with our eyes closed for several minutes. My mind raced at first, but I took Izzy's suggestions on meditation and applied them in order to achieve a deeper level of focus. I found myself back at the waterfall. He was there, waist deep in the pool at the foot of the falls. He walked toward me in the water. I was still, but my body was moving with the current to him. "Write the story, my love," he called over the roar of the water. "What story?" I yelled. My eyes flew open. Everyone was watching me. I had to learn to control these visions better and not make it seem like I was entangled deep within a nightmare. To my surprise, though, everyone was smiling. I guess that meant I was making progress. Story? Alan asked. I just heard write the story in this vision I was having. I left out the part about him simply because I was still embarrassed with all that lovey stuff. Well, I think we all know what that means, Mother exchanged knowing looks with Alan and Sean. But I don't, I pleaded. Kat, what is the one thing you were always so good at, always doing when we were kids? Sean asked me. Driving you crazy? I asked. Well, yes, besides that, think hard. What did you always want to be when you grew up, before you let practicality take over and drive your life? He prompted me. I closed my eyes for a moment and pictured my childhood. I always carried a notebook with me. I was always jotting down ideas of what my big novel was going to be about. I wanted to be an author. I had so many stories floating around in my head before I pounded them out with common sense as it was the right thing to do. Leave the dreams behind in order to do what everyone else wanted me to do. A writer! I wanted to be a writer! I opened my eyes and saw everyone nodding. Even Alan, who had only known me for a few short weeks, knew what my destiny was. Bravo, Kat! Mother beamed at me. But what story am I writing? I asked. There used to be so many I wanted to expand into elaborate novels. Yours, Alan responded first. The one you are living right now. I thought for a moment, who is going to want to read about my spiritual awakening? The little voice that was my intuition piped up inside my head with, more people than you think. You must write it in order to move forward. With that, I could not get through breakfast quick enough. I skipped mindful eating that day and turned to shoveling it all in my mouth and excusing myself to go create. I locked myself away in my bedroom and pulled out my trusty laptop. So, there was a reason other than Netflix that I kept this thing. I opened up a blank document. This was like my canvas. I was the artist about to create my masterpiece. I always edited other people's works, and now I was creating one of my very own. I stared at my blank canvas for a bit. The little cursor stood flashing, waiting for me to begin my dance with words. I took a few deep breaths, and then let my heart write a work of art.